Hey folks, it's Sam Angel, welcome back to the channel, and today we're taking a look at a new aircraft that just dropped. This is the BRsim Designs Beechcraft Debonair 35. Now, this is very similar, yes, to the Beech Bonanza, the A36 that's in Sim currently. Now, the floating thing is just a default spawn-in thing from Microsoft, ignore that. But the Debonair first came out in 1968, and they built about 116 in that first year. Now, I believe they still build them, or they actually, no, they produce them for about a year or two. But variants of the Beech Bonanza have been produced for years. This one was a slightly later model than the original, which of course had the V-tail known as the Doctor Killer. This one with a single fin tail and has tip tanks. It has a 225 horsepower IO470K engine, and it carries 4 people. Now, of course, unlike many other aircraft we've seen so far in the sim, this one doesn't have glass. Actually, that's a lie, it has one instrument. But either way, this aircraft is by the same developer that made the Ag Tractor fairly recently. And I was surprised when this came out because this is a decently powerful, quick, single GA Tourer that's actually a fun plane to fly. And that, for its price of €29 on SimMarket, actually seems worthwhile. There are a couple of things that I'm not a huge fan of, but I will show you here. There are at least 6 or 7 liveries, 6 liveries included with it, all of which are very nice. I'm flying what I believe is a Swedish one right now. In fact, let's go outside and take a look. Now you'll notice the lines are a little bit curvier than the later newer models. This is of course a 60s aircraft. Now I love this blue and white 60s livery, it looks stunning. I think that's Swedish, SE. But the tip tanks are very cool, and each model has those. There isn't a version without tip tanks, unfortunately, but those are useful. As you can see, it's actually sitting on its correct wheels here. And as we go back inside, the cockpit is actually very nice. We have the swing-over arm control yoke here, which, of course, you can remove nice and easy. Nice 1960s style technology here, but in a reasonably realistically integrated way. We have modern avionics there, and another one which I'll show you in a minute. Also, useless but lovely to have the glove box and a door. Doors are important. How do I close this again? There we go. Yes, the door opens. Now, we have here 4 switches, which are very tidily hidden as various tools we have. Now, we have 3, which I will click now. The baggage door, of course. So what I quite like is it actually has baggage in there. Packages. Boxes. It'd be nice to be able to turn those off as an option. Maybe, developer, that could be an extra we add as things go on. Would be kind of useful. But we also have the option for the little winglets that go on the end of the tip tanks, which was a real option for the aircraft. Does slightly increase performance and actually reduce some of the drag there. But we also have the static items around the aircraft, which do go away when you actually accelerate the aircraft and move away from stopped. But the last one I want to show you is inside. Now, of course, I'm taking the winglets off, the static elements off, and I'm closing the baggage door. Now, as you can see, we have an original 60s style attitude indicator. If you wish to, you could flip a button and have a digital one. So it's completely up to you. Let's get the power on and take a look. So startup on this aircraft is very, very simple. Fuel is there. That's our firewall air. That's our alternator and battery. So let me just get the aircraft configured for start there. And let's give her a kick over, shall we? Now, yes, this is my main gripe with this whole aircraft. And it's the only gripe I really have. My door's open. Listen to this. I'm pretty sure it has the default Bonanza sound pack. Which is disappointing because, obviously, the default aircraft, you can't open the door, so they never bothered to change that. But there you go. Right, instruments on. And this is what you can see here. Now, we've got the option for this one, which is a really cool modernization feature you see in a lot of GA aircraft. Or you can go, screw it, I'd like to go back to the original instruments, which is just as usable. But, of course, with this, you do get your airspeed, your climb rate, barometric pressure, useful details, actually. Let's just default ours correctly as it should be, with the reset button there. But I like this. It actually gives it some versatility. I'm going to fly it with it on for this test flight, but it's largely just a semantic point here of drivers, pilots, ship captain's preference, whichever you want. So let's get the yoke back on, and let's take her out for a spin-dilly-in, shall we? Now, textures are actually good. I like this. It's nice looking. It is not overdone. It fits, and whilst it maybe is slightly less polished than Coronado, I like it. It makes it look older. But not in a we shabified it horribly way and put scratches everywhere, but in a actually decently nice looking older aircraft way. And for once, an aircraft where the canopy bars look thinner. This is a mind-blowing thing to me, is that aircraft skins are not very thick. And the pillars are not these ginormous Roman pillars on the corners of a temple. No, they're actually pretty thin. And I love this old original 60s Beechcraft window there, because that's what they had. And it was silly and tiny, and you could stick your hand out it. It was great. But this does feel like the cockpit of so many GA aircraft, and to have a pretty quick, complex single is a very nice feature. Now, of course, early first versions of Bonanza, the original one, had fabric-coloured control surfaces because this was Beech's offering to the GA market post-war. They had two real entries, the Beech Bonanza, the V35, and you had the Cessna 195 business liner. So you had what was pre-war technology continued with a high-wing, metal-bodied, radial-engined, tail-dragger, fixed-gear plane that was very pre-war technology. And then you had Beechcraft come along with the Bonanza line, and this again in the 60s, which was a complex, it was more like a fighter. It's sleek, it has tip tank technology, it has metal control surfaces, metal wings, monocoque body. The aircraft is retractable gear, it's fast, it's maneuverable, and it's definitely an appealing aspect of the GA market. Now, don't get me wrong, I would love a 195, but the Bonanza, and I've always preferred the conventional tail on a Bonanza to the V-tail myself, with the ruddervators. So we're lined up here on the runway. Let's give her a kick, shall we? Now, I do like how bobbly it is on the runway. A few aircraft have done this pretty well recently in terms of actually being soft on the suspension. It's something I really like when developers actually simulate it. Okay, coming up on speed. Up on about 60. We're going to ease back here. I'm just fumbling the rudder pedals around there. So we've got a good climb here. Now, they're not exactly a light aircraft, but they're not exactly heavy either, so climb performance is not extremely zoomy, which a lot of planes in this sim have the tendency to be incredibly zoomy. They tend to be very... Look, these work, that's quite nice. What else works? Does that work? I'm going to press every button. That works. That works, that's nice. Of course, you can actually, if we turn this off here, change brightness on our instruments there, which is actually quite nice. We've got a whole floodlight, we can turn that down. We don't want it on its daytime, but I will brighten up the instruments a touch. So as we're climbing up here, the aircraft does not feel bloated. It does not feel incredibly overpowerful. A lot of aircraft in this sim do tend to feel incredibly powerful and incredibly overzealous. This one, however, I like it. It feels appropriate. The scaling is about right. The general kind of attitude and behaviour of the aircraft feels good. Its appearance in flight is lovely. And it actually looks like an aircraft from the 60s. It's got slightly sleeker lines and smoother curves that a lot of aircraft had back then. Now, handling and performance is exactly what you'd expect. Now, of course, we have got full tip tanks, so we're going to be a little bit sluggish on the roll, because there's a lot of weight out there. But the aircraft does perform nicely. It's well behaved. I like the fact it's got cute little extras and little features that are fun to play with. It may be simple there having those switches, but it's a nice way of doing it that gives us a couple of little things to play with. And if we switch back to our regular attitude indicator, you could be flying in the 60s in this. Obviously, you'd have to ignore the radio stack, but hey, we'll pretend. So apparently that worked without me doing that because I pressed the thing on my flight yoke, but we also have fuel pumps here. So what you do is you can't feed the engine directly from the tip tanks. What you do is you transfer that fuel in from the tip tanks this way. So if we look to our fuel gauges. Where are those? Yeah, here we go. So our main tanks will be going up and our tip tanks will be going down. So you transfer the fuel in from the tips and use it from the mains, which is a nice little feature that actually works in this aircraft. So I really quite enjoy that. Overall, I think for its price, there are things that could be sharpened up, and the biggest complaint I think with most add-on aircraft we see in the sim is that the sounds tend to suck in a lot of aircraft. Now, at least it's not incredibly loud, but it is on the quiet side, and I don't like the fact that when you open the door or a window you get no change in sound. This should roar, and most aircraft get that right. Come on, that's a small thing. So sounds would be my one major thing I'd change, because... Oh, well, they're not actually letting me open it in flight. That's kind of cool. Huh. That's cool. I like that. The aircraft overall, I love the 60s vibe. It feels good. It feels right. It feels older. And it really gives me that really enjoyable retro vibe in the airframe. And visibility is phenomenal. The actual pillars don't feel like they're these massive, chongus granite edifices like every other aircraft seems to have. They seem naturally sized to what your eye perspective would give you. So kudos to the developer there for creating something that doesn't feel chonky AF. Now, when we come round, we're going to come round for landing approach here. The aircraft is relatively slippery, but that's by design. It's designed to be a fairly streamlined aircraft, so it does. It does slow down, though, and you can get a good, nice, stabilized approach with the airframe. Airfield's over there. We'll just swing around here. Handling is very predictable. I'll give it that. There's one or two textures with greys where the artifacting of the sim has taken effect. That is a known quantity. I know how much of a pain that is to get rid of in certain things, especially when using blacks. There's all sorts of DXT processing to take care of there. It's a nightmare. So let's put the gear down to help give us some drag here, because we are coming a little fast, so I'm going to S-turn a little bit here. And just kill some of our forward speed relative to our actual travel. I think we're looking good here, so we'll drop a notch of flaps. Drop 2 notches of flaps there. And we'll keep our nose kind of high here, let the aircraft drag itself down. So flaps there deployed. And we need to keep our eyes on the speed because 60 knots is the stall speed. It stalls quite fast, this aircraft, so keep ourselves about 70 on approach. It's kind of a steep approach, but we should be okay. Camera views. I actually really like this because you've got more of an instrument focus. You've got straight to your radio stack, which is fantastic because there's no fannying around. And you've got kind of an over-the-dash view, which is great to have. Okay, so we're about 70. We're coming on a great profile actually here. The aircraft feels very heavy on approach when it's dirty, which is apparently something that is a factor in beaches, so that feels good, I guess. I've never flown a beach myself, but I've always been told they can feel pretty sluggish when they're dirty. So it's maintaining about 72 knots right now as we come down the slope. Let's avoid that tree. Let the plane sink down here. Little bit of throttle as we just coax her down here. Let the mains touch, let the nose drop down, and we'll brake. That was nice. That was really, really subtle. It feels heavy, which for a GA single it is a heavy aircraft. The Beech Bonanzas are not light. They're not a little Piper Arrow, which is arguably the skinny catwalk model of the GA complex singles. The Bonanzas are the big girls. They're standing in line at KFC, and they are proud. Now, bear in mind, I do like myself an occasional KFC, so I'm going to just basically slap myself there, but I like to think of them as the bodybuilder. They've got muscle, and muscle has mass. The Bonanza is a powerful aircraft. It will cruise well at a good speed. It flies really nicely. It's very stable. And in this case, we have extended range with those tip tanks. So that makes for a nice little add-on there. And it gives us a much more retro, more kind of homely GA complex to fly, rather than just the Arrow, basically. Which this, if we're going to compare it to the Just Flight Arrow, it's not far off, actually. I kind of like it. It's got some problems. Yes, the sound is the big one. And it could do with maybe a texture tweak or two here and there to really compete, but whilst, yes, technically they're kind of study level, yeah, that's the one side of this it lacks. It's not a study level aircraft, but in terms of being a fun, if you're looking for a GA complex to fly that you want to enjoy, I'd say put this on the list. Because for its faults, which I'm pretty sure will get fixed as it has literally just released, it isn't bad at all. It's actually very enjoyable, and I quite like it. So, average or rating, where do we go with this? The beautiful little bonanza. I think we're going to go for 7 avs. Is that a scale? Do I have avs as a scale? I do now. 7 avs. Or 7 aeroplanes out of 10. We'll pick a scale later. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'd say go for it if you're interested. I think you won't be too disappointed. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.